Alright, welcome to my channel. I'm gonna shoot a video on how I set the diaphragm carb up. First and most important thing, no matter what you do, you gotta have a pulse pickup tube going to the carburetor, or it won't pump. And another thing I'll mention, if you think about it, they are harder to start right off the back. You have to choke them, unlike the stock NT carb or whatever. You don't have to choke them as long, or even sometimes you don't even have to. But to start the pumping process, it has to spin over a few times before it'll actually fire up. But other than that, once it's running, it's got gas pumping, you turn it off, it'll fire right back up. But I think this is 3/4 inch, like radiator hose, heater core hose, something like that. Just got one with a slight bend in it to clear my frame. It's not hanging out in my way too much. I could rotate it a little bit and bring it in a little more, maybe even cut my frame a little bit here, unneeded piece, bring it in even straighter. But I can also shorten it a little bit too. There's nothing in the middle right here. This adapter goes to about less than a 1/2 inch on the other side of this clamp, and the reed valve does about an 1/8 inch on the other side of this clamp. So I can take off at least a 1/2 inch out of the center if I need to. But first thing, you have to have an adapter, and what I used was a exhaust header off of it's called a Big Bertha pipe. I think it was like 18 millimeter inside diameter, 17, something like that. It's smaller than the factory header on the stock pipe, which would be a good piece to use also, because this carburetor is 20 millimeter. It does go down to, I think, 17.5 on the inside. So this is right there the same diameter as the inside the carburetor, so it's not restricting it. So once you get one of these, which if you have an aftermarket exhaust for your bike, you could cut your stock header off your stock pipe and it will work. You might would have to drill the holes inwards a little, because this one was pretty adjustable from the factory. Because this carburetor bolt hole to bolt hole is 31 millimeter, and that would be where the problem would be. So I think you might be able to use a stock one, I don't know. But this was from a thruster, or not thruster, Big Bertha Dick beer pipe, whatever, and it worked pretty good for me. So I have a gasket between here and gasket between here, and this is a cutting board that I had a hole, drill hole, has a little drill bit in the center of a big circle blade. It was 20 millimeter diameter, or it was 7/8 or something like that. I drilled it out, drilled my other 2 holes in the cutting board, then I cut it out. Just a rough cut. It's not too bad though. This dissipates a bunch of heat. This motor can be super hot. I'm talking like 250, maybe 300 degrees. Enough to where to burn my hand. Grab this carburetor while it's running, ice cold, which is a great thing. So ice cold air from the carburetor and fuel coming in. It's going to obviously make it run cooler and better. So, but this is RSC reed valve. I just drilled a hole into the block right at the side top corner of the top reed, where it's almost at a slant slightly. It clears the reed. It's flush on the inside of the housing. It's not protruding in front of the reed or nothing, so it clears good. It's not super tight. I used I think it's a 2.95 millimeter drill bit and drilled a hole in, and this is 1/8 inch, which is like 3.175 millimeter or something. And I just had it straight at the time, and I tapped it. It wedges in this aluminum, this billet aluminum. It wedges in it super hard, but it is, I can turn it if I need to, but it clears. And there is a little fuel in here, but it doesn't matter. Just, you see it sitting there moving back and forth when it runs. It's pretty neat. It doesn't affect it this there, just like a little vacuum, then a little pressure, vacuum pressure type thing to get the pumper pumping. But I did have a couple gaskets between here, or I do have. I don't have one between here because it's pretty flush. I can put one between there if I want. I have long, I think they're 65 or 70 millimeter bolts, 2 of them, going through all of this with nuts on the back side. And you have to have spacers if you're going to set it up like this with this filter. This is just a regular air breather filter for a car. I just drilled a couple holes in it, and it had the rubber adapter to where it goes on like a valve cover for a car. I pulled it out and I took my Dremel and made the hole a little bigger because it was only like 15 millimeter. I opened it up to at least 20 now, so it's not restricting one bit. But the reason why it's crunched because I didn't have enough spacers on this side. I could put maybe one more on this side, but I just got some nylon spacers from the hardware store and added a few washers. I think I added 1 or 2 more on this side than I did this side. That's why it crunched a little, but I take it out, stretch it back out, put a couple washers in there, it'll be fine. It's just a little tricky lining all the gaskets and this cutting board, spacer, all of that all at once. So I could space it back out if I need to, and if I want to. I don't need to. It runs great like this. See, there's a few more threads on this side compared to that one. So, like I said, 1 or 2 washers, space back out. I did cut these spacers, so if I did it from the beginning and actually measured it, because I actually have a measuring device now, I can measure the exact deepness I needed the spacer to be to go inside here before I would cut it anyways. So I might just do that later on. Where's that in our washer? Really don't care right now. But number one problem with it, like I said, it's harder to start than a regular carburetor setup, but once it runs great. You can tune it on the fly, just turn some screws. First one, the low idle is like 3/4 turn right now, somewhere around through there, 3/4 to half a turn out from all the way in, and the high is, I think it's around 1 1/4 turn out, which there's a lot more fuel that it could add if it needs it. Plenty more. That's actually on the little rich side on the high. I like it a tiny bit rich. I don't like it a 4-stroke. Barely, if any. So I know I'm not lean. If I'm 4-stroking a little too much, I'll turn it in a little bit. And this thing, I did port it. I ported it since my last video, and it's way larger ports than what it was on the video where I actually showed the third transfer, because I did the third transfer on here that goes in and comes up. Well, I went in, made that about 5mm wider, about 2mm deeper, so it's a massive third transfer now. The one that goes down on the cylinder down into the case, it's bigger now. It's about 5mm wider. I raised the exhaust 1 more millimeter, and I made it 2 more millimeters wide. No, 3 more millimeters wide. Opened the transfers up about 5mm on each side. I brought them back a little bit and forward about 1mm. I didn't raise them at all. If you raise them, it kills your bottom end. So I ran boost ports off of the transfers. I done it on a couple other motors without expansion pipes, and it makes them feel like they have expansion pipes, and they kick in hard as fuck with the boost ports coming off of the transfers. It's crazy, but it's awesome. But there it is. You just gotta have that pulse pickup pretty much. Oh, and I welded a 1/4-inch socket onto my exhaust header / spacer for my throttle. Works great. And that's it. If you want to see anything else, just ask me. But I still haven't set up my chain on the pedal side yet. I'm about to ride her. See y'all later.